Good morning, welcome to Baptist for Liberty. Today is Monday, June 23rd. It is not only just a brand new morning and a beautiful one at that, but it also is the start of a brand new week. So, today, being Monday, normally I would go through news headlines on happened last week and during the weekend, but I have not finished collecting all of the headlines, their titles and the proper links to them, and so not going to be able to cover all of them. And also, during the week while I was trying to collect stories that happened last week, I found more stories that happened, a couple of weeks previous to that I'm going to have to add on to our homepage. But Saturday afternoon, I was able to chat with my old friend Holly. I'd interviewed her last year for the newsletter within our news section on the charity she started, HopeCycle Refashions. And Holly is a very artistic person, a lot of imagination and fun with different crafts, and so she started refashioning donated clothes and donating the proceeds to organizations to help victims of sex trafficking and other forms of human trafficking. And so, having been almost a year, I thought, hey, it's a good time to talk to her again on that subject, and, why not do a brief audio interview so that, hey, we can share it and put it on the podcast. So, yay. So, do you have any exciting news about it or updates?
I don't really. It's been kind of on the back burner for the moment because life has just been crazy. Um, I'm thinking about, I've been kind of thinking about trying to um, put the stuff into like a little boutique or something, because I think the trouble with trying to sell the things online is that, no one can try them on, so they don't know if they really want it, that sort of thing. So,
Yeah, and especially if you do a boutique, then you can do it's a local charity kind of, you draw more
right,
people in.
exactly, yes.
um, so you did make, though, your first donation this winter, didn't you?
Yes, I believe so, and I've made 2 or 3 since then.
Okay, do you mind sharing how much those donations were?
Ooh, I don't have the numbers pulled up in front of me. They've
Okay.
been between $12 and $20 each time.
Okay. I didn't know if you were saving a little bit uh, from a couple of orders before making the donations or not.
I mean, if I get an order that's only like $5, I'll wait until I get another one or two.
Okay.
So
Um,
I've donated to the PolarisProject.org um, at least twice, and then one other time I donated to, I believe it's called Hearts for Women. I'd have to look that up again. Um, I'm really wanting to find either a local safe house or a church organization that's trying to reach out to trafficked victims. But so far, I haven't found anything. I probably need to actually call the police and see if they'll give me any info.
yeah. So with the Polaris group, they're Christian based, right? No?
No, they are
Okay.
not. They are simply kind of the largest national group that works against human trafficking, and they focus on both sex trafficking and just human trafficking, which is people who are being forced to work but not being paid for it.
Right. I mean, that's a big thing. A lot of times when we think about the human trafficking, we think about the sex, but there's a lot of other human trafficking.
Hmm. Yep, especially with immigrants who come in and they don't speak the language really well, and then you've got someone who's taken away all their documents, and now they can't get home, and they're slaves basically.
Yeah, I think it was in the UK. I read a report. And I don't know if I found it because you had posted it about these people. They were tricked into coming thinking they were going to have nanny jobs or something like that.
Mm.
And then they come
Yep.
and they were forced into working like marijuana crops or something. And then when they get picked up by the authorities, they get arrested for working on these crops,
Right.
but
Right.
they got trapped into it.
Right. And that seems to be one of the hardest things with fighting trafficking is it's too easy for the police to focus on the victims and think that they are, perpetrators as opposed to victims.
Yeah, and of course, perpetrators, if they can get away with it, they'll try to mix in with their victims.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's catch-22 for the police on that one.
Yep.
So have you done a lot of more research since you first got started on this?
Um, I don't know if you could call it research exactly. It's been more just as stories come by, reading them. I've honestly kind of stopped recently because they're the kind of stories that once you read them, you are never going to get that information and those pictures out of your head. It's like, I feel like people need to know this is happening, but it's also really disturbing and kind of hard on you emotionally and mentally to have too much of that information stored. So recently, I have not been reading very much on it.
Yeah, it's you gotta balance that out. And that's like no matter what bit of news you're most interested in or helping with, it becomes
Right.
weary on the spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Have you found any
Definitely.
particular verses of scriptures that you find encourage you to keep on?
Mm. Well, there's always the one, I can't remember the reference right now, that talks about never weary in well
Yeah,
doing, but keeping on. Yeah.
that's a good one. Even though it is weary on the spirit, why is it important? Why should it matter to
Mm.
Christians to get involved?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I feel like that's something that we're struggling with now because Christians, um, we don't want to get sucked into this kind of ministry that's only focusing on social justice and it's nothing to do with sharing the gospel because that is absolutely the most important. But it's also so important to reach people where they're at with the needs that they have. And we have a God who is just. He is the righteous judge, and he wants righteousness and justice to rule. And um, he's the one who truly sets us free. So the heartbeat is not just that these girls would be taken out of this kind of physical slavery, but that their souls would be set free from the bondage of sin as well. And that's why I would really like to find a church or Christian based organization that's involved in this, um, so that these girls are not just, getting out of sex trafficking work and learning, a real skill and being able to support themselves, but that they can, find their savior as well.
Okay, so if you would like to help Holly and donate, you can find HopeCycle Refashions on Facebook. Just go to facebook.com/HopeCycle Refashions. There you go. She periodically posts articles as well as Bible verses. The last Bible verse she posted on here is Psalm 94 verses 16 and 17. Who rises up for me against the wicked? Who stands up for me against evildoers? If the Lord had not been my help, my soul would soon have lived in the land of silence. This brings to mind a comment I made, I don't know how many days ago, about not trusting in the strength of the flesh and man. The Lord is our salvation, and He's the one that will stand up against evildoers. However, as believers, having been and in the process of conforming into the image of our Savior, we are in this life charged with standing up and protecting the weak and against evildoers and helping the poor as the Lord gives us the ability to do so. Okay, you can't go broke or put your family in the poorhouse in the process of trying to save everybody else. So you do have to keep our priorities straight. But We do have a work to do, and as Holly pointed out, we don't want to just be focused on social justice. But as you interact with people, it opens the door so you can talk to them about the scriptures. Share the gospel with them. Some of the other things Holly posts, other than current or her latest refashions, is she posts some articles, and there's one in here that she actually posted back in March. But I thought that was interesting, so I thought I'd read this real quick today. And it's on the truth about what happens to the old clothes you donate. Cleaning out your closet and getting organized for spring is a great feeling, and so is seeing the piles of old clothes you've ignored for years bagged and ready for donation. Between the space you've just created in your own life and the perfectly good clothing you're about to bestow on others through a charity like Goodwill or the Salvation Army, it's pretty much a win-win situation, right? Not necessarily. That's because the cast-offs you think are doing so much good are more likely being sold at a profit in Africa, part of an elaborate overseas resale system that's effectively snuffing out other countries' own vital textile industries. Most Americans are thoroughly convinced there is another person in their direct vicinity who truly needs and wants our unwanted clothes. This couldn't be further from the truth, writes Elizabeth Klein in Overdressed, the shockingly high cost of cheap fashion. Charities long ago passed the point of being able to sell all of our wearable unwanted clothes, she notes. According to sustainable apparel consultant Shannon Whitehead, here is what actually happens to our old suits, shirts, and sweaters. For the 4.7 billion pounds of clothing donated by Americans annually. Once you shove them into that big metal drop box, some of the items end up in landfills. Some of them get recycled into rags gets recycled into rags and insulation, and much of the clothing ends up in the markets of sub-Saharan Africa. When they arrive at charity shops, the clothes are sorted, with only about 10% deemed good enough for sale in the retail shop. The rest is sold to textile recyclers, which ship tons of clothing in good enough shape for resale to countries including Ghana, Cameroon, Congo, Tanzania, and Rwanda. So on one hand, you could feel okay about the fact that the profit for the tons of cast-offs is going to support valuable social programs run by the charities, programs for seniors, single moms needing work, families living in poverty, people in drug rehab, prison populations, and homeless people. But on the other hand, there's the worrisome viewpoint that at the same time, the cycle of shipping used clothes overseas is contributing to growing poverty in other nations. That's because as more and more of our clothing discards are sent overseas, there's less chance that African countries will develop their own textile trades. In the past decade, in fact, local industries such as garment making and tailoring have collapsed, creating mass unemployment. It's neocolonialism in its purest form, noted the late Neil Kearney, General Secretary for the International Textile, Garment, and Leather Workers Federation. It's exporting poverty to Africa, a continent that is already exceedingly poor. Further, a recent article in the Root points out the psychological and, as a result, financial blows of the used clothing industry have been crippling. What seems to be carried over along with the previously worn clothing is the old colonial mentality of ours is better than yours, the often unspoken belief heralding all that is Western as superior and all that is African as inferior. So what's a spring cleaner to do? If you don't want to be a part of the overseas consignment market, here are some other used clothing recipients to consider. You can give used business attire to organizations such as Career Gear or the Women's Alliance, which provide interview-worthy outfits to disadvantaged individuals seeking employment. WebThriftStore.com is an online marketplace accepting used items from clothing to electronics. Its affiliated charities include the American Heart Association and the ASPCA. YMCA benefit from the profits. Bring your used clothing directly to local homeless shelters for distribution. If you'd like to recycle your clothing and be the one to keep the profits, try a service like ThreadUp, which receives your shipment of cast-offs, sells them online to individual shoppers, and then gives you 80% of the profits, either in cash or shopping credit. Note, however, that whatever ThreadUp doesn't accept gets passed on either to charitable partners or to textile recycling companies, which could mean your old clothes end up in Africa after all. Okay, and this is like a serious concern. There's a lot of different charities where you think you're doing a good thing and you're actually doing a lot more harm than good. And when it comes to donating to places such as the clothing to Goodwill and Salvation Army, that's, it works against people in other countries because, as the article points out, it piles up and it feeds the poor psychological mindset of other cultures, Western cultures, European cultures, as being superior to their own African, which is a shameful thing to do to any other culture like that. And it brings in mind, sorry, my thoughts are bouncing back and forth here, but that just put in my mind an article that we published a few months ago. I think it was actually back in January, written by Brother Pugh, and I was so glad that he wrote this. And it was on things that we do, or that missionaries tend to do, that's more harmful than good. We are not to export Western culture. We are not to improve other cultures and civilizations because we're superior. There's no such thing as a superior nation. That's fantasy. What we are to do, though, is to share the gospel. And the gospel translates and is needed in every culture, in every civilization. During the time of the early church, there were churches in Africa, there were churches in Ethiopia, there were churches all over the Middle East before it reached Europe. Keep that in mind. I know things have changed, and God's blessed us and allowed the gospel to come all the way to the Western Hemisphere. And that is definitely a beautiful thing, and we need to be thankful for His sovereignty. Now we need to continue sharing the gospel here where the Lord has placed us. We are, those of us in the U.S. or wherever you might be. Yes, the Lord's placed us here in His sovereignty, and we do need to witness to our neighbors, as well as witness to people in other locations as we're able to. But keep in mind that there's a huge difference between sharing the gospel and transposing the Western culture over top other countries. Completely different things. Our priority has to be the gospel, not changing people's ethnic background, nationality, and culture. And I had a couple of other thoughts I wanted to go with the charity thing. A couple of weeks ago, I saw somebody post on Facebook this picture that lists several charities and the pros and cons. Technically, they just had a list of so-called bad charities and a list of good charities. And it made me want to do a segment on charities and doing research, because I do believe Americans in particular, because those of us who have the financial blessings to do things, we do mean well and want to help people. And too often, though, we fall prey to donating to organizations that as well intentioned as they are, such as those that give clothing to Africa, um, they do more harm than good. Uh, or it's really just a business and they're making a huge profit off of the well-intentioned givers here in the U.S. And that's, whenever you see a charity, just be sure to do your homework. And I do want to encourage people to donate to HopeCycle Refashions, which is why I say, look at Facebook. You can send Holly a message. If you go to the HopeCycle Refashions, there should be a button where you can send a message on here, or just post on the wall here of the charity, so you can talk to her. Look to see the articles she's posted and things that she's done. Check out Polaris Project, which is one of the organizations that she's donated to so far. And if you happen to know of a faith-based organization working in Virginia that works in helping, reaching out to victims of sex trafficking or other forms of human trafficking, please go to HopeCycle Refashions, contact Holly, and help her to reach her goal of trying to not just do a social work here, but to donate to a faith-based, Christian-based organization. The Lord, I think, has placed this on her heart to do, but she really wants to do it in a way that brings the gospel to victims of human trafficking. So, yeah, if you have any connections or information at all, please go to her Facebook wall. And again, that's just facebook.com/HopeCycle Refashions, all one word there. And right on her wall, or if you can find the little button that says message, send her a private message on there. Okay, and we are almost out of time here today. Well, I just have a few more minutes here. So, tomorrow's episode, I had a guest on. I pre-recorded it last night, just because the way schedules and such work. So, I actually got to kind of interview my dad / pastor, but my dad only has one mode. He has preach, and so you just give him a topic and sit back and let him preach, and that's the way it works, and which is great because I'm not great at this interview thing yet. I still need a lot more practice at it, but Lord willing, I'll be getting better, and I think my dad's a really good preacher, so I think you'll get a lot out of tomorrow's subject. Just to reiterate, every month for the newsletter, I pick a theme, and just like a primary topic. And so May, since Mother's Day was in the month of May, then we did Godly Womanhood. So of course for June this year, with Father's Day, also, following very next, then this month's theme was Godly Manhood, but I haven't had very many guests to talk on that subject yet, and this month is almost over already. It's gone by really quickly. So I was really glad to finally have my dad on to help me talk about the subject, and I won't give it away. It's kind of it might seem like a silly one, but I think it's interesting. It's, social cultural issue. But it's not as heavy and serious, because like this month being our very first month with the podcast, I've had so many really serious subjects, I think, and some of them a lot heavier than others, and so I just think I had a lot of fun last night, and of course, Dad and I talked for, I don't know, an hour or more after we were done recording about all kinds of things, and so that's always fun. So I look forward to sharing with you tomorrow's episode, and hopefully getting some feedback. That would be great. I haven't yet received any messages on the podcast. Well, no, I take that back. I did hear from one sister-in-law in Australia who said she was listening to it our very first week, and I was really excited. And I did hear from a friend, a brother in Ohio. So, yes, that was really good. It's very encouraging, especially having at that point only produced about 3 or 4 episodes before they commented. It was like, yay, we have listeners. And I was also really excited within our 4th episode. We actually had a thumbs down on YouTube. And it's like, hey, somebody gave us the thumbs down. So either they just read the subject and decided that since we were Christians, they were going to thumbs it down or whatever, or they actually listened to it. And so it's like, yay, we have listeners. So that's cool. I'll take it. Negative feedback, okay. And I try to always remember to give my email and say, hey, you send comments, questions, or hate mail, goes here. Worksjoanna@yahoo.com. Yes, Works is my genuine last name. WORKS. Okay, so I am genuinely out of time to ramble, and now it's time for today's Proverbs, which is Proverbs chapter 23. When thou sittest to eat with a ruler, consider diligently what is before thee, and put a knife to thy throat if thou be a man given to appetite. Be not desirous of the dainties, for they are deceitful meat. Labor not to be rich, cease from thine own wisdom. Wilt thou set thine eyes upon that which is not? For riches certainly make themselves wings, they fly away as an eagle toward heaven. Eat thou not the bread of him that hath an evil eye, neither desire thou his dainty meats. For as he thinketh in his heart, so is he. Eat and drink, saith he to thee, but his heart is not with thee. The morsel which thou hast eaten shalt thou vomit up, and lose thy sweet words. Speak not in the ears of a fool, for he will despise the wisdom of thy words. Remove not the old landmarks, and enter not into the field of the fatherless. For their Redeemer is mighty, he shall plead their cause with thee. Apply thine heart unto instruction, and thine ears to the words of knowledge. Withhold not correction from the child, for if thou beatest him with the rod, he shall not die. Thou shalt beat him with the rod, and shalt deliver his soul from hell. My son, if thine heart be wise, my heart shall rejoice, even mine. Yea, my reign shall rejoice when thy lips speak right things. Let not thine heart envy sinners. Be thou in the fear of the Lord all the day long. For surely there is an end, and thine expectations shall be cut off. Hear thou, my son, and be wise, and guide thine heart in the way. Be not amongst wine-bibbers, among riotous eaters of flesh. For the drunkard and the glutton shall come to poverty, and drowsiness shall clothe a man with rags. Hearken unto thy father that begat thee, and despise not thy mother when she is old. Buy the truth, and sell it not, also wisdom and instruction and understanding. The father of the righteous shall greatly rejoice, and he that begetteth a wise child shall have joy of him. Thy father and thy mother shall be glad, and she that bare thee shall rejoice. My son, give me thine heart, and let thine eyes observe my ways. For a whore is a deep ditch, and a strange woman is a narrow pit. She also lieth in wait as for a prey, and increaseth the transgressors among men. Who hath woe? Who hath sorrow? Who hath contentions? Who hath babbling? Who hath wounds without cause? Who hath redness of eyes? They that tarry long at the wine, they that go to seek mixed wine. Look not thou upon the wine when it is red, when it giveth his colour in the cup, when it moveth itself aright. At the last it biteth like a serpent, and stingeth like an adder. Thine eyes shall behold strange women, and thine heart shall utter perverse things. Yea, thou shalt be as he that lieth down in the midst of the sea, or as he that lieth upon the top of a mast. They have stricken me, shalt thou say, and I was not sick. They have beaten me, and I felt it not. When shall I wake? I will seek it, yea, yet again.